Could you talk about what is happening in the Kursk offensive that the Western mainstream media right now, and of course the entirety of the United States NATO axis, they are all celebrating this literal invasion of Russian territory. So what's going on?
Well, generally, when we talk about issues of this nature, I say right up front, I'm thousands of miles away, distant from the problem, and I'm a prisoner of the same data set that you and everybody else has. What we can get, on on the internet, from newspapers, from interviews that other people do. But in this case, it's different. And again, you asked in the beginning, how you tie in what happened to me with the FBI and what's going on in Kursk. You may have noticed that there's a Chechen gentleman named Apty Alaudinov. He's a major general in the Russian armed forces, and he is the commander of the Akhmat Special Forces, which is more than just Chechens. It includes the special forces of the Russian Federation. It includes a Wagner element that transitioned over to the Russian Ministry of Defense and operates as part of the Akhmat Special Forces, and some other units. And these are the units that responded quickly to deal with the Kursk situation. I know Apty Alaudinov pretty well. We've met several times. I've interviewed him several times. I've had personal conversations with him several times. I feel comfortable enough to say that when I know him well enough to know the man behind the voice. So when I see Apty Alaudinov on TV talking or on his videos talking, I can listen to the tenor of his voice. I can look at his eyes. I can see what's going on behind his eyes. And it tells a story that for the average person, you wouldn't be able to get. First of all, I would tell you that he's not panicked at all. There's no panic in the man. One, he's a Chechen. Remember, Apty is a hero of Russia. I mean, literally, he's got the medal. But he's done some amazing things from a warrior standpoint. He in the Second Chechen War, he made a decision that he wasn't going to continue to fight the Russians because the Chechen cause had been hijacked by the West, by the CIA, who was bringing in radical non-Chechen Wahhabist jihadists, and so he went over and joined up with Akhmat Kadyrov, the father of Ramzan Kadyrov, and he began to fight the jihadists. One of the jihadists was a guy named Shamil Basayev. Shamil Basayev was a Chechen who fought in Abkhazia against the Georgians in 1992, 1993, and then later fought against the Russians. He's the guy who did the Beslan school massacre. He's responsible for some of the worst atrocities. And when Apty went over and to the Russian side with Akhmat Kadyrov, Shamil Basayev killed his uncles, his brothers, his cousins, slaughtered Apty's family. Apty went into the mountains with a handful of Chechen special forces and spent several months hunting down Shamil Basayev's band, more than 100 guys, and eventually played a role in killing every single one of them, including Shamil Basayev. This is a serious dude. This is the real deal. And so, there's no panic in his voice because he's not going to panic, but he's as honest as the day is long. I mean, the guy just doesn't know how to tell a lie. And he's, if you listen, he's the one voice that said the Ministry of Defense has lied to itself so many times that they start to believe their lies. He's the only Russian official saying that. And he can get away with it because he's on the front line dealing with the consequences of these lies. What happened in Kursk is the incompetence of the Russian Ministry of Defense that left a critical area on the border unguarded. I mean, you can't put poorly trained 18-year-old conscripts assigned to the border guard, on the border and expect them to stand up against what turned out to be, elements of the 18 best units in the Ukrainian armed forces, the best equipped units, the best trained units, the best prepared units, who came in operating with American intelligence using total spectrum warfare, advanced communication systems, using artificial intelligence based upon real-time intelligence to predict Russian movements, to anticipate gaps, and then to exploit these gaps. There was no one behind these guys. They came through and off they went. And it was Apty's job to come in and clean this mess up. And he's done it. He's doing it. Slaughtering the Ukrainians. I mean, he's killed thousands of them. He's destroying all of their equipment, and it's over. All that's left now is to kill those who are starting to dig in. Don't believe anything you're seeing on Western TV. Don't believe any of the garbage that comes out on the Ukrainian Twitter. It's just, believe Apty Alaudinov. Here's where it comes in. I right now could pick up the phone and contact Apty right now. But I'm concerned. I'm a journalist, but would I be, digging my own grave to call Apty Alaudinov right now and get an interview to talk about what's going on? There's a hesitancy here. Now, I'm going to tell you that hopefully next week that hesitancy will go away, because I have put in the request formally so that it's done. So no one can say, well, it's personal. You're taking, this is only because you work for the Russians that you're able to talk to Apty. I've gone in and made the formal request through other channels, and hopefully I'll be able to have this conversation. But journalists have their sources. Apty Alaudinov, I'm not calling him my source. I don't want to get him in trouble. He's a very responsible individual, but I do have his contact information, and he is making press appearances. And under normal circumstances, I would have picked this damn thing up, and I'd be able to sit here and tell you tonight, yeah, I just got off the phone with Apty Alaudinov, and this is what he said. But because of this ongoing FBI investigation, I have to be very, very careful on how I proceed. And that's not what a free press is. That's not what a free press is. And you know what? The U.S. government doesn't want me talking to Apty Alaudinov. They don't want that truth out there. The U.S. government right now is working with CNN to promulgate crap, and more crap. I just want to remind everybody out there, including the FBI, because I know you're here tonight. Welcome. And again, thank you for not shooting my dogs when you came in my house. I really appreciate you letting me put them in the backyard. But, you don't get to, you don't get to do what you're doing. You don't get to dictate these stories. You are part of a national security establishment that declassifies intelligence and releases it to the press for the purpose of manipulating public opinion. You want to know how I know that? Because you admit that the intelligence you declassify is wrong, and you know it's wrong. You know it's not accurate, and yet you release it to the press as if it's accurate. So the press can say declassified intelligence shows that Russia, that China, and you do it. You're lying to the American people, using the mainstream media as a vehicle to tell these lies, to manipulate public opinion. You know what the watchguard against this manipulation of data by the U.S. government is? You and me. We're the watchguards. We're the guys that bark. We're the guys that say, not on our watch. Not on our watch. And right now, the U.S. government is spreading lies to CNN, to MSNBC, to all the major news networks, to the New York Times, lies, lies, and lies. They get published to an American audience that goes, well, it's the New York Times, it must be true. No, it's a lie. All of it's a lie. The antidote to the lies is the truth that comes from independent media that goes out there and finds real sources of information, like Apty Alaudinov. They don't want you to hear from Apty Alaudinov. They want to manipulate. And here's the FBI, who knows this is taking place and indeed on some occasions has participated in the charade itself. They have corrupted mainstream media, turned it into little more than a stenographer for government lies. And they had the audacity to say that my journalism needs to be categorized as the byproduct of a relationship with a foreign government that is directive in nature. I can tell you, Apty Alaudinov isn't calling me up saying, Scott, you have to call me so that I can talk to you. The Russian government's not saying, Scott, we need you to pursue talking points A, B, and C. That's not what happens. Scott Ritter wakes up in the morning and says, look at the lies being told by the US government. How can I overcome these lies with the truth? And how can I gain access to that truth? By going to Russia, meeting with people like Apty Alaudinov, establishing relations so that when the time comes, you can gain access to this information. It doesn't mean that you take everything that's said at face value. No, the job of a journalist is to be skeptical. But at least now I've received information from a source I trust that I can evaluate and then weigh off against what's being told elsewhere and use my experience to say, this is what I think's happening. This is what I think is happening, not what's being dictated from above by the Russian government. I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, Danny, but this is a very dangerous time in the United States. We are on the cusp, because let's talk about Kursk for a second. I just want to also remind people what happened in Kursk is that NATO invaded Russia. NATO invaded Russia. NATO invaded Russia. This isn't, Russia invaded Ukraine, so the Ukrainians get to attack Russia. No, Russia didn't invade Ukraine. Russia responded to Ukrainian war crimes that were put in place after the 2014 Maidan coup, backed by the CIA, part of an effort of using Ukraine to bring down Russia. And the Ukrainian ultranationalists had spent a decade slaughtering ethnic Russians and Russian-speaking people in the Donbass. And Russia finally said enough is enough, and they came in to end that. This is a special military operation designed to preserve the rights of a Russian population that was being subjected to cultural genocide and subjected to mass murder. Ukraine doesn't get to commit a crime and then say, but since you're holding us accountable to that crime, we're going to invade Russia. But it's not even Ukraine invading Russia. You see, the force that's going in is a force that's hand-built by NATO. I just interviewed a Russian senator. He's the head of the Veterans Committee, very close to Putin, very close to the Ministry of Defense, and he's down in Kursk right now. And he said, we being the Russians have captured a lot of equipment and a lot of people, and we're putting it together. He said this group that came in is equipped to the highest modern NATO standards, better than most NATO units. They use full spectrum dominance theories. They have Starlink connectivity at the vehicle level, sometimes at the small unit level. And all of this is fed up through satellites down to, back down to the command staff to get real-time location. They can track the movement of their forces. They have real-time intelligence coming in saying where the Russians are, and they use artificial intelligence to not only maneuver, but to deploy new drones, a new generation of drones, high-speed drones, AI-driven drones that flood the battlefield. This is the NATO army, the Polish-speaking, French-speaking, English-speaking NATO army that invaded Russia at the command of NATO. This wasn't the initiative of the Ukrainian government. This was something that NATO planned. NATO is executing. The Russians have the receipts. And but they also have all of the equipment, and they've reverse engineered it. And they said, "Wow, you guys came in with the best you got, and it's pretty damn good. It was impressive." Um, but Apty Alaudinov has come in, and he's impressive. One of Apty's specialties, and this is why he's been promoted so rapidly, is that he is a quick learner. And when you go on the battlefield and you experience things, you adapt. You come up with new concepts, new tactics, new operational theories. And they pulled Apty out of the battlefield and sent him to the General Staff Academy, not only to learn from others, but to teach people too about his experience. And you see these generals, these officers come from the battlefield, and they share their experiences. And then that gets turned around into interim doctrine that's published down. And the Russian army is always learning, always getting better. And right now from Kursk, there's a whole new set of lessons learned that are being fed back into the Russian military education system to educate everybody from the private to the general about what the hell's going on with this new technology. But this is a serious thing. NATO invaded Russia. People, you got to understand that if the Russians went to Mexico and brought in Colombians and brought in Venezuelans and brought in Cubans, and next thing you know, 25,000 of them with the best equipment, organized, crossed the border and captured Columbus, New Mexico, and Pancho Villa Part 2, we'd be going to war against Mexico, and we'd be going to war against Russia. You don't get to invade the United States and not expect to pay a price. NATO invaded Russia. And so there will be a Russian response. That's the other thing this senator said, is that sometime in the not too distant future, and he said, you'll know it when it happens, but Ukraine is going to pay a very, very heavy price. And he said, so too will NATO. He said that the concept of NATO bases in Poland and Romania that are being used, for instance, to house F-16s, being able to operate without consequence is no longer part of the reality. We are so close to a direct conflict between Russia and NATO. Right now, it's a proxy conflict, but we are so close to a direct conflict, which means we're very close to a nuclear war, which means we're all very close to dying. NATO invaded Russia, and you got the Germans. I mean, the Germans have gone insane. The Germans have literally gone insane. You have German officers, retired and active duty, sort of smirking. Yes, we know German tanks are back in Kursk, and we know what happened the last time we're there, and we're happy that things are different this time. Jawohl, mein Herr. Jawohl. I mean, that's what happened. You scratch a German, you get a Nazi. You guys think I'm joking? The German military just tried to slip something through. I don't know if you heard about this, because they've the remilitarization again. Scratch a German, get a Nazi. They've decided they want to become a militarized society again, and so they've elevated the Wehrmacht in World War II to some sort of revered status where now Germans are allowed to revere the memory of those who served in the Wehrmacht during the Second World War, forgetting for a moment that they did serve Adolf Hitler. But no, these were simple German soldiers, and they must be revered. And so they slipped in. They said, hey, yeah, we'd also like to revere the SS and the SD and all those other Nazi organizations. We want them to be revered too. And fortunately, there was somebody in German civil society that went, what? No. And the German army had to pull back. But the fact that the German army thought that this was a good thing tells you about the sickness of that. This is scary. This is scary. We have Germany acting like, this is a cool thing to have German tanks on Russian soil killing Russians. It's not a cool thing. It's not. It's a very dangerous thing. And yet, all the NATO and NAFO and whatever the hell you want to call them cheerleaders out there. They're acting like this is great. Ukraine's in Kursk. Well, first of all, they're all going to die or be taken prisoner. Very few of them are going to survive. Russia's already blown away all of the logistical support infrastructure in Sumy, which is on the Ukrainian side of the border. And they've blown up the tanks. They've run out of gas. And so the Ukrainians right now are digging in. They're going to run out of ammunition. Then they're all going to die. That's just the reality of it. Apty Alaudinov is very confident. And again, I've met the guy. I know the guy. I look at his eyes. I listen to the tenor of his voice. This isn't a guy that's putting. Now, for all the people out there, that Chechens are TikTok warriors. TikTok fake warriors. I'll tell you a little story. So I'm in Moscow, and Steven Seagal had asked to meet me. And after we met, I get a phone call, and he says, "Hey, I'd like to invite you out to dinner." And so myself and my host, Alexander Zarianov, went there with Steven, his son, and his entourage. And a very pleasant evening. But I had been trying to meet with Apty Alaudinov, but he was at the General Staff Academy, so it's very difficult to get up. But the phone rings, and it's Apty. He says, "Hey, I'm available." And so I turned to Steven Seagal and said, "Hey, do you mind if Apty Alaudinov joins us?" And he's like, "Never met him before." He's like, "Sure." And so Apty comes in, and it's pretty fun to introduce Apty to Steven Seagal and the conversation that took place. But so Apty's there, and I'm just a impudent, junior Marine officer at heart, and so I said something like, because he, Apty, being a Chechen warrior, is putting digs in at the Marines, and I'm putting digs in back at him, and but I said, "Come on, man, you're a general. What the hell do you know about fighting? You're in the rear with the gear." Oh, that pissed him off. He pulls out his cell phone, and he's a nice guy. He wasn't that angry at me, but he was a little perturbed that I said what I said. And he starts opening up videos, and he said, "Do generals do the forward reconnaissance when their unit goes into combat?" He's showing him on a BMP, driving in there. Then they take fire, and a couple of they get a call that a BMP had been hit, and a couple of the Chechen soldiers were wounded and needed to be evacuated. And there were no other units available at that time, heavy fighting. And so Apty jumps in the BMP and drives it up to the guys. He gets out, and he's laying down suppressive fire. You hear the rounds going over his head, bing, 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 bing. The Chechen next to him gets hit. He's down. Apty's boom, boom, smiling on his face, patches up this guy, evacuates this guy, gets him out, gets him in, fires off some more rounds, and then drives the damn BMP away. A major general in the Russian army just went in and rescued wounded Chechens under fire and evacuated them personally. And I went, "Okay, I guess you're not a TikTok warrior." No, he's the real deal. I told you this is a real leader. But it was an interesting night. Never, ever, ever, ever impugn the courage of a Chechen. They will kick your ass.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.